Hey gamers, it is Book Club Thursday, and I am reading the Witcher series right now. I've been reading the Witcher series for a while now, but since I finished Baptism of Fire last week, I thought we'd talk a little bit about Andrzej Sapkowski's phenomenal series. I'm sure you've all heard of it, whether you've played the Witcher video games. Witcher 3 was hugely popular, or if you've watched the Netflix show or have listened to Dandelion's rendition of Toss a Coin to Your Witcher. Oh, it's not Dandelion if you're watching the show. In the show, it's Jaskier, I believe is what his name is, but he's Dandelion in the books, and he's Dandelion in the video games. This is a really cool series. Andrzej Sapkowski is a Polish author, so the books do have a wonderful Central and Eastern European flavor to them and tone, and some of the mythology is like different. Whether I don't know if this is stuff he's come up with or it just is folklore from that part of Europe or not, but it definitely has a different feel to the characters and the lore, and I love it. I really enjoy this series of books. I first read The Last Wish back in 2019. I think I had heard the TV show was coming out. I had owned the Witcher video games and played a good bit of Witcher 1. Hadn't finished at that time. I didn't get around to finishing The Witcher, the first game, until actually 2020, and I am going in order. So right now I'm actually working on what's it called? Fire Emblem Three Houses. Once that's finished, I'm going to be flipping over to play Witcher 2, and then I can go to Witcher 3, because a lot of folks love Witcher 3. I got into this series back when I was considering getting into Shadow of the Demon Lord, and I wanted some new dark fantasy to kind of kickstart my brain. And I read The Last Wish. I went on to read Blood of Elves, Time of Contempt, Baptism of Fire. I'm currently reading Tower of the Swallows, and I read Sword of Destiny, and those really had a good time with all of those. And again, I finished the first Witcher video game, and I've watched the whole series, and I'm going to keep this review spoiler-free. So if you have not read the Witcher series, don't worry about it. Even though I'm going to be talking a little bit about how I finished Baptism of Fire last week, I will not tell you any in-depth stuff about the characters in this story. I leave it to you to discover. This is more of a general Witcher overview about what I like about the series and whether or not it's a series you should get into. So, basic overview of the story. Geralt of Rivia is a Witcher, a professional mutant bounty hunter. He has been alchemically changed. His genetics have been changed, and he has special abilities. He lives longer. He can boost his through different kinds of chemicals. He drinks drugs. He can gain different powers, and he can change his vision, and he's just stronger, faster than normal humans in this world. The world is a fantastic place. Magic is dark and mysterious and very, very powerful, but you have a lot of the same fantasy tropes of other, series, other D&D type series. And when I say that is you have elves, you have dwarves, you have gnomes, you have halflings. The mythological beings, like I said, there are quite a few that I've never heard of, and these may come from Eastern European folklore. I'm making some assumptions here, but the monsters actually aren't what's often evil in the world. Like so much fantasy, really the humans are probably the worst things that you could come across in the world. The first couple of books in the series are short stories, about the Witcher and his tales and what him fighting monsters and trying to get paid for it. And he's not always the most popular with locals. They don't like him for who he is, and oftentimes more mystical ancestries and species like elves don't like him because he's out there killing creatures that may have a connection to like a fairy world. Eventually you get into the series that's kind of the main series of the Witcher tales, and that features the Witcher and the Lost Princess Ciri, and who is how there's this great war between the northern kingdoms, which are kind of fractured and smaller, and this dark evil. I don't know how evil it is. because I don't know if it's evil, this dark empire from the south called Nilfgaard. So that's a major part of the story, and it's the Witcher's, Geralt, his relationship with Ciri, with several wizards, notably Yennefer, who is very important to the series, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a really fun story. So where The Witcher stands out from other fantasy fiction is, I think the characters are very interesting because of how human they are. Sapkowski writes flaws into these characters. They are not perfect individuals. They're not perfect heroes. And oftentimes, they aren't good or evil. I wouldn't put Geralt into a bucket of good or evil. I do think he leans way more towards good, but I think he's very pragmatic. I think he's a bit full of himself sometimes, and I think he's very hard-headed. But I would never say he's an evil individual, but I also wouldn't say he's lawful. He's not a lawful good paladin, let's say that. And the characters are driven by their own motives. Every character, there is none of that mwahaha, I'm the bad guy kind of feeling to any character that I've read so far in the series. Again, I've got a few more books to go, so maybe one of those characters will show up. It's dark fantasy, but it never takes the turn towards bleak fantasy. I would say it's probably far less Shadow the Demon Lord and a bit more Ravenloft in my. If I had this to be some kind of scale, I always felt that the gothic horror of Ravenloft, was creepy and definitely horror, but Shadow the Demon Lord's effing bleak as hell. That's not the Witcher stories. Another thing that I think that the Witcher story does really makes it very interesting. I'm not going to say well, because this is a part where I love it and I hate it at the same time. The use of time in the stories. The books jump around a lot. When I was reading The Last Wish, I thought it was going to happen chronologically. It did not. If you watch the TV series, you notice that jumps around too. There's the scene where, I believe it's the same episode where, the Witcher, where Geralt, this is a little spoilery, so I do but the show's been out for a while, where Geralt is dealing with King Foltest, and he is, trying to save Foltest's daughter, who has been turned into a Striga. She's like a vampire, and at the same time, you're dealing with what's happening with Yennefer of Vengerberg, who's transforming into, turning herself beautiful at the sacrifice of, her ability to have children, and she's like destroying her body. And when Yennefer comes out, she like nods to one of the kids and says, one of the kids sees her at this dance when she comes out to introduce herself to all the other, in this big wizard party. And one of the children there is Foltest, who in the same back and forth is like the king in Geralt's story arc in the same show. The book does the same thing. So if that back and forth jump in time bothers you, you're going to have a lot of that in the series. It does, it goes backwards, it goes forwards, you have flashbacks, you have foreshadowing. There's even an exploration in the book of future historians on this world, and you'll have segments that read like a historian 1,000 years in the future and their take on what happened. That's pretty cool. I think it's a very interesting take on this fiction, but it can make for a challenge when you're reading it, especially if you're a little tired or you're not being careful with your reading. Sometimes this jumping, it gets a bit confusing. I read at night not too long before I start to conk out, and from time to time, especially if I'm really, really tired, I need to go back and reread segments and say, wait, what just happened? Was that the time frame I thought it was? And there are occasions where the backstory and the politics gets really in depth, and it's going through lots of names, and I feel like I'm reading a history book, and that can get a little dull. So I sometimes do cheat, and after I've read a segment where it's a lot of that, I will go to like one of the Witcher wikis and just catch up and make sure I didn't miss anything that was super important. So it does happen from time to time. Is The Witcher right for you? Should you toss your coin to The Witcher? If you like fantasy novels, yeah, give it a shot. Start with The Last Wish. Give it a read and see if you enjoy it. They're not long reads. They're not hard reads. They're fun and relatively easy. And actually you'll be, way more caught up, for the next series, the next season of the series. So that's that. If you have a specific take on the Witcher series, drop it in the comments below. Let's have a chat about The Witcher. I know there is a role-playing game out there somewhere. I don't know anything about it with the Witcher characters. There's lots of board games, and of course there's the video games and the card game in the video games. There's Gwent. There's all kinds of Witcher stuff out there. It's really just all over the place. So you can definitely find a lot of ways to meet this character. But I would suggest going to the books. Start where the whole thing started. You're going to get a lot out of it. So thank you for watching. Play nice, friendos, and I will see you all tomorrow.